Hello, everybody. Welcome to CoreNet New England. We're so excited to have you in our program today, which is Space as a Service, Uncharted Territory, and Growing Segment of Flexible Space. And just in the interest of having some more folks join in, just stay tuned and we'll be back right with you. Hi, everyone. If you're just joining in, thanks for joining in to our program this afternoon, Space as a Service. We're really excited. We have a dynamic presentation to show today, and we're going to be starting in just 1 minute, so stay tuned. All right, well, we are at 12:02 and we're going to kick off our amazing program today. Happy Friday. Welcome to CoreNet New England. So happy you could join us today. The program is Space as a Service and Uncharted Territory in a Growing Segment of Flexible Space. And we all know how relevant it is in today's climate. We have an amazing panel that I'm going to introduce in a second. My name is Sandra Gucciardi. I'm with STV DPM. We're an owner's project management firm here in New England, and we are a proud platinum sponsor of CoreNet. And I also am co-chair of the Education Committee. I'm on the Real Advantage Committee, and I'm part of the Equity, Inclusion, and Diversity Committee. And so just to get started, again, we have an amazing panel. Kimberly Smith is here joining us. She's the Senior Director of Workplace Strategy for Knoll. And we have Ryan Simonetti. He is the CEO and the co-founder of Convene. So before we kick off the program, we just want to note some upcoming webinars and hoping that you can join us for those. November 10th, we have Akamai, a connected workplace. And I will say, as someone who has seen that building, seen the design, it's an amazing space and you don't want to miss it because it's a virtual tour. So hoping you can join in for that. November 13th, we have the Flexible Hybrid Workplace, Agility in the Post-COVID Era, another really, really relevant topic in today's climate. And I do know the panelists of that, and I'm telling you, you don't want to miss hearing from those experts. And lastly, December 8th, Networking Tactics for a Virtual Business Environment. That's where we are right now, virtual. I'm lucky enough to be on that panel with some amazing expert speakers. So hoping you can join us for the December 8th program. And always, please feel free to join in the conversation. You can join in through Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And if your firm or you would like to send some announcements, whether it's a job opening, project updates, new hires, promotions, please feel free to just send us that information. Our key communications liaison for that is Stephen Smith at North Star Project Management. And we want to take this time to really thank, and we really appreciate our sponsors. We know it's been a challenging year, so even more so than any other time. Thank you so much to our corporate sponsors, our platinum sponsors, our gold and silver sponsors. Thanks, everyone. We really appreciate it. And before we get show on the road. I'd ask that if you have any questions, please feel free to engage with us. We'd be happy to hear your questions. Please submit them via the QA window, as you see there in your Zoom platform. Do not put them in the chat, but put them in the QA. And just in the interest of time, we're going to try to answer all of those questions at the end of the session. So thanks again for joining. And I'd like to introduce our expert, Kimberly Smith. She's a workplace strategist for Knoll. And Kimberly, take it away.
Thanks so much. We're thrilled to be here with CoreNet Global New England chapter. So thank you all for joining us on this amazing Friday. Today's topic is going to be talking about this growing workplace workplace movement, the rise of space as service. So a really important topic to us, more so now than ever before. As Sandra mentioned, I am the Senior Director of Workplace Strategy for Knoll and the Research Group. I've been an employee of Knoll for going on 19 years, believe it or not. And prior to that, I was a customer in corporate real estate for Merrill Lynch as a project manager. So it was really important that I join you today and talk a little bit about space as a service and really corporate real estate and really the direction and path that that segment of the market has been going in recent years. So Knoll began studying co-working spaces, the precursor for this space as a service movement or flexible office movement, over 10 years ago. And we've continued to study and this active work with our clients in this segment. So today with you, we're going to review some of those trends that are really increasing in flexible space. We're going to identify 5 different types of space in this flexible ecosystem. We'll also share the benefits, discuss successful planning, some product considerations in spaces that are really supportive of employee experience, and then really understand the future outlook from a great co-presenter that I have with me today, Ryan Simonetti, who is the co-founder and CEO of Convene. And we're both going to share a little bit of our insights and what we're hearing from people on a post-pandemic outlook. So we've evolved from simply thinking about co-working in this flexible space scenario, and we might ask ourselves why. We're in a unique moment that today's competitive economy is really driving organizations to think about new ways to innovate and increase their speed to market. So to support their changing business needs of lots of companies today, are looking at more adaptable real estate strategies and options to really reduce exposure to risk. It can be just in time or consume only what you need from a strategy perspective. And if we think about the behavior of consumers today and think about services such as Uber, right? Think about services such as Airbnb. That's a consume only what you need mentality. And we really have been shifting toward that. But co-working originated 15 years ago in 2005, which was basically for freelancers and remote workers to physically share open office space. So they had a professional place to go. And over the years, that model has really evolved into variations on flexible workspace that incorporates private offices and other options that are increasingly help to serve the enterprise and corporate customers. So we know that lots of organizations that are in the corporate real estate world, like CBRE that you see in the center of this screen, they were quoted as saying that 75% of corporate occupiers actually anticipated co-working or flexible space to occupy their portfolio. And also JLL talked about 30% of corporate portfolios will comprise a flexible space, including co-working, incubator spaces, accelerator spaces by 2030. So we know that that's really something that people are looking to inspire people to come to work. So we're going to talk a little bit about those themes as we see. And the last stat is from Yardi Matrix, where they say that 43 million square feet of flexible space in the top 20 markets. The important part of this whole thing is that it was up from 23 million in 2017. So that only represented 1.7% of the overall real estate, corporate real estate inventory. So really a small percentage at 2% of inventory. So you can see that there's exponential growth in this model and this opportunity for people. So if we look at the numbers in historical context, both from a number of spaces and the number of members, we know that they're continuing to grow exponentially, tremendously year over year. So we're seeing this to be a model and area of the world that is growing and growing. And if we look ahead, over 5 million people are projected to work in flexible spaces by 2022. And I will say that this data was collected prior to, so that's why we're doing some post-pandemic considerations, because these numbers are, being looked at and getting reevaluated over time. But we do know that the membership in co-working has escalated so high in recent years because of so many different reasons, and we'll explain exactly why as we run through this. So the managed office offers a new way to really deliver workspace. So if you look at the center of this and the traditional models on the left, the co-working is on the right, where in a traditional real estate model, companies customize their space. They got T&I dollars, tenant improvement dollars, generally if they were leasing spilled out, that would be branded to their own experience. But generally there was a lot of out-of-pocket expense. So lots of capital intensive expenditure on the client side in a traditional model. And generally they were really long-term leases. It's likely that you've heard of 10-year lease often over and over. I know in my life in real estate, it's definitely been 10 years, been the number that most people work with. They've shrunk down to 5 years in that. So that's even considered long-term this day and age. And then co-working all the way to the right was pre-designed space. So there's no capital. You don't get tenant improvement because you're not the only tenant, you're not the sole tenant. These are generally short-term leases that would offer a month to month. And it really looks to membership as opposed to actually leasing and being a tenant of a building. But what's nice about that is there's a lot of community focus, a lot of events that are happening, a ton of opportunity for you to tap into excessive or extensive amenities that are out there. So what managed workspace in the middle started doing and outsourcing some of the services that are associated with it is it started saying, let's go shorter on the term lease. So maybe like a 1 to 2 year lease. It was often in partnership with a landlord, and typically a company could get into these managed spaces and really brand to their own singular culture. So that became really important for people to really identify with a space and kit.
Hey, Kimberly, just real quick, an interesting stat for those that are interested in these sorts of things. The average lease term in the United States right now is just under 6 years, down from 10, not even a decade ago. And it's also interesting that the average life expectancy of a company birth to death today is just over 6 years. So it's interesting seeing the lease term match actually the average life cycle of a company today.
It is amazing. I love that stat. It's also interesting that that long-term is considered 5 years. I mean, we used to, years ago when we were planning from a strategy perspective for the large financial company I mentioned I work for, we used to say, what do you look like 5 years out? What do you look like 10 years out? Now we ask people in terms of months. So I think that 6 year average of a company life to death is really an interesting statistic. So while co-working has really generated most of the buzz and sort of, captured the Kleenex of shoes in the market, if you will, it's not the only way that people are providing space. So that's where this broad opportunity for us to call space as a service evolved, because these multiple models really make up this ecosystem that we're going to talk about. We'll take you through each of these 5 different variations and really talk about what makes them unique and then what makes them similar. And when we talk about some of the companies that might be example companies, they can fall into any number of these in the ecosystem. So just because we use like Regis as an example, it doesn't mean that they only provide on-demand space, for example. So we're going to talk you through some of those flexible work or even flexible meeting space, which we'll talk about. So on-demand is really flexible work or meeting space. Co-working is really shared office space with multiple companies at the same time that are sharing services. Outsourced workspace, which is in the center of your slide, is dedicated office to an individual company, but managed by someone else. And then client space, managed workspace client is managed by space-as-a-service company. And managed event space Ryan is the absolute expert here. I almost feel like you named the category, in my opinion. This meeting event and amenity space that would be shared by building occupants. So let's dive in here a little bit more about what makes them unique.
Tough business to be in today, though.
I know it, but it's coming back, trust me. And when people are looking from a hybrid model, what's going to draw them back to a space? People are really going to be looking at this ecosystem of flexible office. So it's really current for CoreNet to have us speaking today. So this on-demand space is shared office space where multiple companies come together, they're shared services. Primarily though, this on-demand space are private office layouts, so a little bit more traditional, if you will, with meeting rooms that are available. Oftentimes they'll share things like administrative support. It's really a cost-effective for remote workers or independent professionals. You know, this whole idea of the contingent workforce or consultants love this opportunity to get private space out of their, hectic distractions of home, the kids, the dog, the cat, the UPS man, whoever, or I should say Amazon delivering to you. So some of the examples of this are Regis. They're probably best known. Many before, in fact, decades before. They started in the late 90s, actually, getting these spaces together. So there's no upfront cost. It's only a monthly lease. So you can go in, it's owned by the space-as-a-service company, owned and maintained by the space-as-a-service company. So this is a monthly lease. Co-working is a little bit different. And if you think of one word that really differentiates this, this part of the ecosystem is membership. So the typical lease term is really a membership to various space sometimes, right? So you could say I am a member of WeWork, and you can go to multiple locations perhaps if you're traveling, et cetera. So the membership really has an opportunity for people with no hassle lease. You can really rent based on or a month, a day, but it's not connected to square footage. It's connected to actually you as an individual membership. So there's the difference. There's no upfront cost from a building perspective. You don't have to build out space. You don't have to pay for maintenance. You don't have to pay for connectivity to the internet. So it's very, very flexible for people. Often open space and shared workspaces, lots of times they have actually emerged over the years into having private offices and also suites as companies start to grow. But some of the examples of the companies that play in the space are WeWork, Spaces, and Common Ground. They typically have a community manager or a concierge that really helps people through the networking opportunities and events that they host. So co-working has been really known to build community networking. And on the bottom right, Galvanize is a project that Knoll's worked on in Colorado, and they actually really unique model to their community curriculum, or I should have said curriculum last, commerce, community, and curriculum. And they had a really high tech school where they would feed through networking and education. It's really an important differentiator in the cooking world. So the next one is outsourced workspace. This is dedicated office space to an individual company. The typical lease for this is 2 years. It's owned by the space-as-a-service company. And again, no upfront cost, just paying for the lease, the 2-year lease, right? The advantages for this is that you can actually have it branded to your own company. You can start to build culture as you're growing. It really helps to customize the workspace for the individual contributors. A really good example of this called Knoll. They manage a lot of real estate in New York City and other cities, but New York is probably the best example. But they have little office suites that people would come as a startup. And maybe, to Ryan's point of 6 years being the average, maybe they would be in the space and say, okay, we're going to try for 2 years because we're unsure of our success, and we're going to move to, updating our lease and moving into the 6-year experience. And then the next one is managed workspace. This is a turnkey solution for companies that want to occupy dedicated space. Maybe they desire a modern aesthetic, that's designed and managed by professionals. So that's the difference. They're really avoiding the time stress that space management requires and the staff that it requires to allow them to actually focus on their core competency in their business. In one notable example of this was when IBM took over a building in New York's Greenwich Village. They moved 600 of their employees into 70,000 square feet that was designed and managed by WeWork. So again, even though WeWork was an example on it, we still know that they have branched out and decided to also have a managed workspace in their portfolio. So that's a good example. This space is owned by the individual company, which is also nice from a culture and connection perspective. And some examples are powered by We, which is really WeWork, and then also Knoll. So here you are, Ryan. I'm using you as an example. If I say anything wrong, you have your opportunity to correct me here live. So Convene was started by a couple of real estate veterans who saw a process that was full of complexity and inefficiency, and it was ripe for disruption. So you pioneered a concept of managed event space and partnered with landlords to manage shared amenities spaces, much like a gym that might be in an apartment building or a hotel. So providing these services and programming supported by technology to all of the building tenants created this significant value that was added for the occupiers. The advantage to the tenants is that they only needed just what they needed when they needed it. So for example, and avoiding leasing spaces with like huge conference rooms or boardrooms or training rooms that might get used a couple of times a year. So we really looked at that and thought there's an opportunity for this to happen, right? So it's based on an event, an actual thing. The space ownership is usually owned by the landlord, no upfront cost. You just pay for usage and the amazing amenity of food and beverage that is usually a big draw for people. And then the advantage is that the landlord can really offer greater amenities to all of the tenants if they are offering shared conference facilities that allow companies really to consume only what they need. I can't wait till Ryan can actually explain his model much better than that.
That was pretty solid.
Good. I should have asked you beforehand, right? So the largest space-as-a-service companies by square footage, and this is actually data that is from Colliers International. This is the most recent data. I updated this slide to share with you, where people are as far as the square footage by company. So it's just fascinating. This was actually done post-COVID. So I think it's an interesting thing that we're sort of looking at these numbers and thinking about what is happening. So why is there a growth in this popularity? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Many people desire a more casual, social, very work environments that feel more dynamic and really minded. So know that there's an incredible increase in the contingent workforce. In fact, by the year 2025, 22% of the 22% of the global workforce is going to be consultant or contingent workforce, which is amazing. So guess what? They're going to need a place to go. They're going to want some after this pandemic and being sort of isolated at home or sheltered in place. They're going to want a fresh environment to move towards. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And also this idea of more remote distributed employees. So I don't know about you, but we have examples of this at Knoll, where some of our employees just decide they're done with the busyness of the city, want to move out to a suburb, and they want to have some work from home days, or sometimes even more relocation to a whole nother state that has a little bit more, nature or something like that. So we know that to be true. And then new types of workers. We know that there are side gigs, people are doing, the gig economy is unbelievable. They're also wanting space that helps support their entrepreneurial nature or their, creatives or makers. We also know that there's growth in this popularity. People really desire less commuting. We will also see that since people have been used to not commuting over the pandemic, that it is highly likely that there is going to be an increased desire so they can go to the gym, so they can do the things that they've been able to do in their work-life balance, to think about that. We also know that the rising costs. So if you think about the average real estate cost in larger cities like New York, Chicago, Boston, Los Angeles, San Francisco, if you think about that, that's also a driver to look to a different model. And then also new tax laws that usually drives popularity in this arena as well. So organizations are utilizing this for a couple different reasons, and the top three are here. Reducing occupancy costs. So that's number one. Think about if you were to not have to build out boardrooms and meeting rooms from a square footage perspective, they're usually the largest space types that you might have in your floor plan. So the other thing is workers' demand to work closer to home, 3% on this list. And this is just going to escalate. That one is, if the pandemic taught us anything, it's definitely that people desire flexibility in where they're working. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in the post-pandemic part. And then also the opportunity to be more agile so that you can grow your business. So lots of people are looking at that. And I'll give you a personal example. At Knoll, we acquired a business. A lot of times people look at the strategy to increase their business sales, profitability, et cetera. So Knoll to fully last August, it was an e-commerce work from home, standing desk experience. And it was a really smart business decision, not knowing that we were facing a pandemic in mid-March. So some other things also include, avoiding fixed leases, protecting you from market volatility. I would venture to say that would probably go up if we were to give this same questionnaire to people now. So the benefits of co-working for companies are very wide and vast. So some of the opportunity is for the lowering your risk factor or giving more flexibility and out of pocket costs. So as Ryan mentioned, the company, the average life of a company might be 6 years. There's so many entrepreneurs or the contingent workforce that we mentioned that are really trying it out, right? There's so many people from younger generation, even the average age in a co-working was at one point, I guess 5 years ago, was like 38 years old or something. So people are really looking for something new. They want to lower their risk. It also gives an opportunity to give flexibility to employees. So in the game of attracting and retaining, it really makes sense for us to look at these models so that you can offer that, space as a service, you can offer a more flexible model. So another thing about convenience is that there's, design research ahead of things, meaning you are connected to better technology. Lots of times people are getting tapped out at their home office right now. So the convenience of having great technology at one of these spaces is fantastic. And then also the social and cultural aspect of this, providing collaboration, providing networking, etc. So a really important part of all of this. So some of the most valuable companies, the logos that you're seeing here, use space as a service as a strategy. For example, Microsoft in November of 2016 signed a deal with WeWork to move 300 of employees to WeWork's locations in Manhattan. And according to The Star, the group represented 70% of Microsoft's marketing and sales teams in New York. The software giant is also moving a 37-person Atlanta-based advertising team to a co-working building. The 41-year-old company is hoping to feed off the energy at every WeWork location you feel when you walk in. So energy is what's missing from this virtual environment. I guarantee you, if we were live together today presenting this, it might be a different experience. However, we're all sort of adapting to what's going on. So the space as a service also offers benefits across other parties. So it's really great for end users for some of the things that we talked about. The distributed geography is the biggest one, I think, the geographic convenience. If you're working in a suburb of the city and you don't want to do the commute every day, it'd be great if you could rent really easily at a co-working space on a daily basis even. Work week is going to be dynamic. If you can start to do that, that would be amazing. It also provides great business opportunities to landlords and developers, really increasing their property values, allowing them to offer their clients more flexibility and tap into tenants that they might have thought before, like, I'm not going to get a startup company because there's too much risk. Well, now if the risk factor is lessened by time, that really gives everybody a great opportunity to provide new revenue models. So another one, which is going to be highlighted by COVID, is the bottom one on the left for the landlord and developers, the activated of abandoned spaces. I think about restaurant retail right now in every US city, and those spaces will really have to be looked at and thought in terms of what their next use is going to be. So we know this becomes a really important thing. So looking ahead, we really think that there's going to be some trends that are going to be taking place in this. Definitely a growth in enterprise business. So larger companies are going to be looking at this as a model, space as a service as a model. We definitely see greater segmentation, meaning more specialized co-working spaces and more focused spaces. So that would mean, so for example, if there's a desire for an environmental group to get together, that would be a really great thing. We also see that people are seeking a more professional atmosphere. So they do want to go to work instead of feeling like they're working from their kitchen table or their sofa. And then integration into other industries. So we're starting to see co-working spaces or space as a service pop-up spaces in hotels or shopping malls, or even I keep seeing so many of these office spaces that are getting designed in residential towers, in cities that are building lots of residential housing. They're actually adding office to the lobby or somewhere in the building. So we see this happening. We also see the impact of corporate real estate. This demand for flexibility is really being driven by everyone in this market. Tighter workplace ratios, we know that to be true. The need for advanced technology. If they need to change technology every 18 months, why would you want to incur that cost on your company? So I think that's an important part too. And then also hospitality. You get the opportunity to brand and have amenities in your workspace that you might not want to do for your organization. So I think that's interesting too. If you're trying to pilot an idea, the opportunity in these space as a service is great, whether it be a new workstation, workspace type, or even an amenity that you might want to think about building. So a lot of times they foster information and feed information that way. And then you want to partner with a company that's continues to be immersed in this territory, that's both research and both has research and client success. Here's some of the success that Knoll's had in different markets, in different areas, like Civic Hall in New York City, Galvanize in Denver, as I mentioned, even the lobbyists that I'm sure are very busy working today at 1776 in Washington, DC. So the value of all of this is that we have experience in co-working and hospitality, which is really connected, leading in design and offering a range of solutions. So lots of co-working companies want to have expectations that are direct, a simplified process, a speed to market, lowering of costs, and the planning expertise. So this is a really important thing. And what users want is pretty much the same thing: a simple process, a speed to market. If they can just move right in without having to think about it, that's really it's for that. And then workplace metrics and knowledge. So that is very key. Moving forward, we are going to want to measure everything and usage. We want to understand how people are going to be using space so we can inform decisions from a corporate real estate perspective moving forward. So that is going to be a really important topic as we run through this. We did a benchmark of 4 different co-working spaces and essentially share with you the different usable square feet per person in these locations, whether you're an individual seat, a shared seat, or a hot desk location, which is significantly smaller, of course, and no surprise there. And then also the percentage of space for individual work versus refuge, enclave, team assembly, and community spaces at the co-working areas. And then some products that would give you sort of this range of seated positions, very important, inviting, relaxing settings, And then degrees of enclosure. Even though you're in an open space, you definitely want the opportunity to have a little bit of privacy in what you're doing, both acoustic privacy and visual privacy as well. And then we think at Knoll about holistic ergonomics and the importance of supportive ergonomic accessories, whether it's a task chair, a task light, a monitor arm, etc. We know that that's really important to employee experience comfort. And then mobility and connectivity. This is essential. We always say power everything. When in doubt, power everything. So you have accessible power for people and really supporting mobility. That is really the key to a dynamic environment, and encouraging end user usage is by providing really super simple things for them. Another thing is having security and storage for people. Security is probably top of mind for everyone in all of this, whether it is distance, having comfortable distance from people, having the opportunity for people to feel like their things are secure. So quickly, I'll run through the post-pandemic outlook. I mean, obviously, there's been a tremendous amount of uncertainty, not only about space as a service, but the entire real estate industry with people with spaces, very low percentage occupants that are back right now. And we won't have any answers per se for a little while, but we know that the experts are weighing in with their opinions. So we'll share a couple of possible scenarios that we see. I mean, at first we felt like the headlines were pretty grim, that they were predicting the demise of co-working spaces with customers working from home for the foreseeable future, and leases that might be sunsetting and people going, well, I'm unsure, I don't want to sign a lease or update my lease. We know that traditional office operators are really suffering as well. But we want to understand, what's happening. We don't believe that COVID is going to doom co-working, as this headline said. We do believe that it's not all bad news in this post-COVID era, and three reasons why it may actually be successful is sort of getting back to if we sort of get back to the roots of it, of their workspace. There's an author named Richard Florida of the University of Toronto, and Stephen Padigo, who wrote that the pandemic should prompt cities to embrace telework. Telework is an important thing, but co-working spaces play a key role in that program, and hosting the relocated remote workers and helping them to a scene. So that's becoming a really important part. The other thing is resource coordination for small businesses. So think about the things you might be missing from your office, like a printer that is high-speed printer, the service of having a concierge tell you where to go and what to do for things. Those sorts of things are really important. And then number three, which should be, highlighted in red, in my opinion, is that community is really key to recovery. We believe that bringing people back together to really get that embodied energy sort of missing from being alone at home, that's going to be really key to making this successful. And then, how can they survive? Really getting back to the roots of adjusting the business model to attract larger, more established companies. So larger, more established companies may be looking at geography as an example of something that they might, this distributed geography, and maybe looking at satellite offices. And then we want to promote flexible space, and then shift back to maybe private offices and meeting spaces. So that's sort of like queuing you in very soon, Ryan. I have 2 more slides to share. Just a quote from Avison Young saying that, coming out of the current crisis, business may turn to flexible office even more, especially if the recovery is slow and halting. Companies will probably turn to shorter term flexible leases so they can easily exit because they don't want to be burned the way that they have been, right? With empty buildings, empty spaces, and maybe decide that that would be the great way to go. Then Liz Elam, who's a co-working consultant, admits that they're going to face some hard months ahead. So, but she says one thing that I think we all feel is nothing, absolutely nothing, can really replace this face-to-face communication that we all miss. So, whoops, Ryan.
Thank you, Kimberly. So I'm gonna try and be quick because I know we want to leave some time at the end for Q&A. For those that maybe aren't familiar with Convene, we really think about ourselves primarily as a hospitality brand and really a workplace experience platform. We partner with landlords, but also progressive organizations to create and service premium places to meet, to work, and to host events. And we really do that through the integration of design, hospitality, and technology, which I think, as we would all agree, kind of post-COVID, digital transformation has accelerated across all industries, in particular ours, and 100% within Convene. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we start to talk about future trends and what we're seeing. I think what we're most proud of and probably best known for is the level of the experience that we deliver. We have net promoter scores, which is kind of our customer experience metric, which a lot of companies use. Oop, I think I got muted for a second. Is 90, which puts us like above brands like Apple and Tesla and others. So between that and some of the accolades that we've received for our culture, are things that we're really, really proud of, and I think continues to differentiate the brand all these years. We're still an 11-year-old startup. We actually just celebrated our 11-year anniversary on November 1st. So have seen all the twists and turns that have happened within the industry over the last 11 years and have had a front row seat for a lot of the change that we're all seeing. Just switching.
Happy anniversary.
Yep, thank you. Switching over. From a mission perspective, our thing is really creating your best day at work. And I think in a post-COVID world, wherever that happens. And I'll talk a little bit about kind of what we think about the future of work and how technology and digital is going to play such an important role of that, not just from a work perspective, but also if you think about how we meet, collaborate, how corporate events and conferences are going to happen in the future. A larger and larger percentage of those will be virtual or will be hybrid with a physical experience connecting to a virtual audience. And we think it's really, really important for us as a company, if we want to live up to this mission, that we have to build a technology platform and a capability that can deliver a great experience to our customers literally wherever they may be, whether that's at the office or ultimately at home or participating virtually in a meeting such as the one we are today. Some quick stats on our portfolio. We are one of the larger companies, I'd say, in probably the flexible work category. We've now have a few less locations than we did pre-COVID. We actually had 32 pre-COVID. We have used this as an opportunity to consolidate the footprint a bit. But we've got 25 locations across 6 cities, making up 1.4 million square feet. About 1 million square feet of that is meeting, conferencing, event, and hospitality amenity spaces. The other, give or take 450,000, is our flexible workplace product. And as you can see, we've been serving a lot of people a year and a lot of different companies from SMB to mid-market to enterprise. And I think have a good sense for, at least on the ground, what these customers are asking for, what their expectations are, not just pre-COVID, but also now post-COVID, as we've been able to collect a lot of real-time data over the last 9 months here. I'm going to get to trends, but I think kind of as we think about Convene and our future business model, we believe that we've entered the era of what we call kind of the hybrid workday experience. This is something that's actually been happening for a long time. For those of us that have been in the industry and have been tracking desk utilization, I think most of us know that on any given day in any office, at least in this country, average daily occupancy is less than 50% typically. So to some extent, we've been working remotely for a very long time and have been doing kind of this hybrid work thing. It just never was, I think, accepted and adopted the way that it is now at a senior level within an organization. To even, I'd say, within my own organization, I think there was definitely some, I would say, unconscious bias around the need for FaceTime and being in the office. I grew up in the investment banking world. And, if you weren't working 100 hours a week and you weren't the last kid sitting on your desk, it wasn't going to work out well for you at the end of the year. And I think what's beautiful about what we've gone through, as hard as this has been and as tragic as it's been, at least as it relates to future of work and culture, there's going to be a lot more acceptance around employee flexibility and, most importantly, choice, which I think at the end of the day, as human beings, really what we want is choice and freedom. And I think that will be one of the things that becomes really accepted as a standard as we move into even a post-COVID world. When we think about kind of a hybrid workday, we think about around the individual, not the company. We've got at home, we've got corporate HQ probably redefined, and then we've got third spaces, which to me is kind of this flexible space ecosystem. For Convene specifically, we believe that our future is hybrid. For a very long time, I'd say over the last 11 years, we've made a living in designing, building, managing physical spaces and experiences, again, powered kind of by this intersection of design and real hospitality, kind of the human delivery that to some extent, I think that we've pioneered, but also hopefully have created as kind of a gold standard within the industry. We started our digital transformation about 3 years ago. We knew that the future was going to require us to have a digital platform and capability that could reach our users wherever they were. In our meetings business, we've been doing hybrid events literally for a decade, live streaming to virtual audiences. We knew it was coming. We just had no idea that it was going to come this fast. And I'd say 5 to 10 years of our company's digital transformation has happened literally in the last 9 months. So the big focus for us as a company has been digital, and it's this idea that physical and digital coming together to create this kind of unique omni-channel experience is really what hybrid is. And so we say our future is hybrid. It's the intersection of physical and digital that allows us to deliver an amazing workday experience to our customers wherever they are, their office, a convenient location, or ultimately at home.
And I think, Ryan, really quickly, what some of our clients have been talking about or grappling with right now is that hybrid is going to be very, very different in the workplace. When they go back in, a lot of rooms might not have the technology that they need, so they have to reassess that experience. So it's going to really be, and we're at an impasse of really making spaces work in a new way of that hybrid model.
Completely. And I think there's different ways to think about hybrid. There's hybrid in place, right? Meaning I'm at home, I'm working remotely, I'm here. And then there's hybrid of how do you actually deliver that experience between space and technology. I think one of the things that makes us unique as a company is we're like a one-stop solution for this stuff. When I was looking at the flexible workspace slide before, we have product lines and service lines that kind of do all of that stuff. So everything from kind of dedicated managed space, either within our facilities or, for example, we partnered with Brookfield and designed, built, and manage a 90,000 square foot location, including all of the facility staffing and hospitality for a big financial services firm here in New York. We've got our on-demand spaces, which is a mix of kind of meeting, conferencing, as well as our membership spaces. And then the big thing that we've built and launched successfully over the last 6 months is an entire virtual platform. So similar to the meeting and event we're hosting right now, we have an entire software platform that hosts these types of virtual conferences. We've got a dedicated technology and production studio that manages this experience on behalf of our customers. We've hosted virtually hundreds and hundreds of events over the last few months. And I saw one of the questions in the Q&A was, well, where are growth areas and what are you looking at when you think about the business? And I'll tell you, virtual is an area where we're spending a lot of time and energy. There's literally more demand than we can fill as a company. And so that's an area where we're really focused on building that kind of virtual conferencing and meeting capability. Switching gears, I think to kind of what we're seeing in a post-COVID world, this line from Bill Clinton, I think is really important. It's ignore the headlines and follow the trend lines. In a moment like this that is so uncertain on so many levels between COVID, political environment, business environment by industry, sector, macro, micro, I think it's really important that you focus on what are the things that are actually not going to change as opposed to things that are going to change. And the big thing that we know as an organization, and this has been confirmed by all of the conversations we've had with our customers, that the importance of face-to-face, human-to-human collaboration are not going anywhere. So I don't see a future where there's no office or there's no meeting spaces or we literally don't come together physically. I think that that is such an innate part of who we are as human beings. And when it's safe, that stuff will come back. The question is, well, what's that new format going to be? What are the spaces that that's going to happen in? What's the technology that's going to support that? And I think for us, that's where we're spending a lot more of our time is as people do come back together, what does have to change to support it? Some quick COVID-19 observations, and these are very macro specific to industry. COVID-19, as I see it, is the great accelerator. Any trends that were happening pre-COVID, whether that was shift to flexibility, growth of second-tier city, flight to quality, all of these things, digital transformation, shift to e-commerce, all of that stuff has just been accelerated greatly. And I would tell you from a lot of the CEOs that I get a chance to speak with, both in small companies as well as larger companies, all of us will agree that on the digital side of our business, that this has been a massive, massive accelerator. The second thing is there's all this talk about urban to suburban. I actually don't believe that. If you look at really the data, yes, you've seen some of that movement outside of the core gateway cities, but what you're really seeing, and this was a trend pre-COVID, is what I call the rise of the rest. It's the second wave of urbanization. It's what's happening in Nashville and Austin and Dallas and Atlanta. It's what's happening in Tampa. It's what's happening in Raleigh and Charlotte and Columbus and Charleston and Park City and Salt Lake City. And so to me, it's kind of this next tier of urbanization as companies and individuals, because of technology, because of the acceptance of remote work, start to move to more affordable cities that still offer great lifestyle amenities and benefits where cost of living is fundamentally different. And I think that you'll see a lot of companies, big and small, start to move at least part of their strategy into some of these markets. The third thing is that tech will lead CRE into the future. I've been, I guess to some extent, probably like a godfather in the prop tech industry, it really was starting when we were starting Convene. And so many of my peers, whether it was the team at WeWork or the guys at VTS or Trust or all these different platforms that have come about over the last really 10 to 11 years, there's no question that software continues to eat many industries, and CRE is no different. And we expect that trend continues to accelerate. And to me, it's not something to be afraid of. It's something actually to embrace, because when executed really well, it does create a better experience. It does make us more efficient, and it does create a lot of value. The next thing is the consumerization of real estate. When I think about co-working and what Convene has done, this is really what we've done. We've taken something that had really never been productized or branded or I'd say, commercialized, and we're turning it into a consumer experience. And when we think about our customer, yes, it's the buyer who buys from Convene, but really it's the end user. Who are the people that are using our spaces? How do we design an experience that speaks uniquely to their needs and at the same time speaks to what their organization that they typically work for is also trying to accomplish? And if anything, we see this trend continuing to accelerate moving forward.
Yeah, we agree with that. I also think there's thinking of the consumer and the different mindset, that there's this expectation of immediacy, right? That people believe that things could be available to them as quick as possible. So I think that sort of layers into this and why there's such a demand in the realm of business.
And that's a perfect lead into the next one, which is access is the new ownership. And by ownership, I mean long-term leases. I mean owning your own real estate footprint, delivering and owning your own service delivery or your own facilities management. Our sense is the world is getting too complex, and things are moving too fast, where really being able to outsource these things and access them when you need them, as opposed to having to maintain them all the time, starts to create the flexibility and agility that not only organizations need, but most importantly, individuals want, right? Even for our own company, this is something that we're really, really embracing. And we are starting to see that some of the more progressive companies that are in the market today working with us, thinking about their space. It's really fascinating that, you know, they're a 100-person company. They've now said, you know what, we only need dedicated space for 30 people. We want our own office branded for us for 30 people. We know we're going to have to host more town halls. We're going to have to do more things to bring our team together, but we don't want to have to do it in our footprint. Can we buy 12 meetings a year at Convene that are fully experiential, fully service, where we can bring our entire team together? Can we do all of our strategic offsites in those spaces? Some of them might be virtual, so can we use your virtual platform? And oh, by the way, that other 70 people, we actually just want them to buy a membership to Convene. So if they do decide to show up, they have a place to work from that day. And what you see is that you can take a cost per employee from 12, 13, 14, 1500 a month down to like 400 or 500 a month with that type of creativity. So not only do you provide flexibility and agility and deliver a better experience, but you can also dramatically reduce the cost of real estate, which I think is really, really interesting. And then the last thing, as we've been talking about, the future to us is definitely flexible. That was true pre-COVID. That will be increasingly true as we work in a post-COVID world. The other thing is adaptive reuse, and Kimberly started to talk about this. You know, for those that know, we've done some really interesting adaptive reuse of retail. You know, we converted the Saks women's store at Brookfield Place into a flagship Convene, which has been really, really successful. And we are starting to see work and hospitality and multifamily and residential, all of this stuff is really starting to blend together. And I think that will continue to see something we see moving forward. And then just lastly, as it relates to the future of office as we see it today, if I had to make a prediction, which is always a dangerous business, as we know from all those pollsters out there the last few weeks. Number one is the future is hybrid. Technology will lead us into that future. Choice, flexibility, and personalization, which is really interesting about the individual, like how do you personalize an experience around them, will start to drive CRE decision-making in the future. We always thought about ourselves as premium and thinking about that in the context of hospitality, but now safe is the new premium. And again, we believe that hospitality and service, especially in this world, will continue to be more important than ever. And this flight to quality is going to continue to accelerate, whether that's a flight to a quality brand like Convene, or flight to a better building, or flight to a better space. If you need less space, you can actually afford to pay more to deliver a better experience. And again, we think that that's something that will continue to drive the industry moving forward. Awesome. So hopefully that was quick, and we've got some time for Q&A.
Yes, and here's the dangerous part. I'm sharing your email address. So we'll see. So thank you all. I did it really fast. So I'm going to go and check the chat and check the Q&A and answer some of your questions. I know you already fielded one of them, so let's see. Okay, so for Ryan, what metrics do you look at to indicate growth areas?
So I'd say a lot, and we look at kind of macro metrics and then micro metrics. On the micro standpoint, we've built a lot of technology that allows us to understand how our companies are utilizing our spaces. When do people utilize our spaces? What services do they buy? How does that break down by industry, by geography? And a lot of that data informs how we design spaces and how we modify or enhance the experience over time. And then from a business perspective, I look at leading indicators. So in our business, I look at leads, qualified leads, and opportunities in the funnel. And when I said there's a huge opportunity in virtual, we launched our virtual business, like an MVP of that back in August. Week over week, our top of our lead funnel metrics have been growing at 30% week over week. It went from a 0 revenue business to next year will be potentially a $60, $70 million revenue business from nothing. And so again, that's an area where we're very, very, very focused right now. It's a big need from our clients, big and small. I'm sure Debbie and the team will say producing these things on your own and trying to manage these Zooms and manage your own presentations is hard. And we've been able to combine kind of our software with expert event planners and technology producers that do these types of things for our clients for not that much money. And we do see that as a really big opportunity.
And speaking of managing the experience, we got the 2-minute warning. And one other question about Convene. A person said, while their food option is awesome, how is Convene offering, how is the food option being changed during COVID for food?
Yeah, look, we've had to rethink everything post-COVID. The way that we deliver hospitality, how we think about designing our spaces, cleaning standards, HVAC quality and infrastructure, contactless. I mean, you name it. I would say the biggest changes have been to hospitality, which for Convene, your food and beverage has always been a really important part of the Convene experience. One of the things that I think has helped us get really high NPS scores the last 11 years. And we've had to rethink it. So the first thing is everything has to be individually packaged and prepared. So no buffets, no open stations. It's all literally individually packaged and prepared meals, as well as cutlery, which honestly, the sad thing about that is even though we're using all sustainable materials, it's not great for the environment. And I'm hoping that post-COVID, we can get back to, I think, a little bit more of our traditional delivery model, just because from an environmental perspective, even if you're using all sustainable stuff, it doesn't take away the fact that there's a lot of single-use stuff that's happening right now.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So I think that takes us right to 1 o'clock. We did have more questions that were really good, but I wish we had more time. I think I took too much time on the front end. Sorry about that. So thank you all for joining us. We're thrilled to spend some time with you today. We hope you have a great rest of your day and join the next CoreNet Global event in New England.
Awesome.
Kimberly and Ryan, thank you so much for taking time for this presentation today. We really appreciate it.
No, it was awesome. Thank you for having us on, and you have a great weekend, everyone.
You also.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
All right, bye.